Hey guys, Miss Kilgore here. Today we are going to be working on our 6th and 8th grade math. It is from our choice board, and on both of them it is the bottom and all the way to the right. It says daily math, and that looks like there are 4 different small assignments there. Today we're going to be talking about the first one. It says choose 3 fractions and write 3 equivalent fractions for each. So before you guys can actually start on this, you're going to have to know what an equivalent fraction is, right? Okay, so equivalent fraction are when 2 fractions are the same value. And knowing how to convert a fraction into an equivalent one is a very important math skill. So I have 2 different methods for you, and then also a third method that we're going to learn today. So the first 2 you can use to do your homework. Please don't use the examples that I'm using on the board, okay? All right, for method 1, we want to multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number. So if we start out with 2/3 and we want to find the equivalent fraction to that, we can take any number. I'm going to go ahead and use 2, and we're going to multiply them. Now it has to be the same number on both, right? Because we're looking for them to have the same value. Okay, so 2 times 2 will be 4, of course, and then this will be 6. So if 2/3 should equal 4/6. So that's one way you can get an equivalent fraction. As long as you're multiplying by the same number on the top and on the bottom for the numerator and the denominator, then that will give you your equivalent fraction. Now that's method 1. Method 2 is when you use division. So let's put a different fraction up here. If we have 5/10 and we want to find an equivalent fraction to that, we would have to divide it by the same number on the top and on the bottom. So let's divide by 5 on both. And when we do that, we get 1 and we get 2. So 5/10 is equivalent to 1/2. Now this is a basic concept with pretty basic numbers, but you can use larger numbers for yours. You are 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, so I'm not expecting you to use very small ones, okay? So you can go ahead and get started on that. And that's your assignment for the day. You have to come up with 3 of those. And you can use the first method or the second method. Now, one thing that I wanted to include, even though it's not part of your assignment for the day, is a third method about equivalent fractions. And that's if you already have 2 fractions and you want to find out if they're equivalent, which this would allow you to check your work, right? Then you would start out. See, my problem is 4/8. Now I want to check and see if 8/16 is equivalent to 4/8. So when you get your answer, your 3 answers that you're going to have, you can use this method to check and see if you're correct or not. So what you do is, it's just like any kind of equation. You can cross multiply and set them equal to one another. So we're going to have 4 times 16 equals 8 times 8. And when we do this, Emily, you care to get your calculator out and help me with that? Yes. I know that 8 times 8 is going to be 64. So when Emily gives us the answer to this, we'll see if it is equal. And if it is, then these two will be equivalent fractions.
64.
64. So, 64 equals 64. So, are these two equivalent fractions? Mm-hmm. And let's take a second to look at the two that we've already done. We had 2/3 equals 4/6. So how are we going to check that? We're going to do the cross multiplication and see if we're right. So that would be 2 times 6 equals 3 and times 4, right? So 2 times 6 is 12. And 3 times 4 is also 12. So those are definitely equivalent. Let's double check our other problem for the day using method 3. And our other one ended up saying 5/10 was equal to 1/2. So let's check that. Were we right? We cross multiply. We got 5 times 2. And we got 1 times 10. And we know that 5 times 2 is 10. And 10 times 1 is 10. So that's two methods on how to get an equivalent fraction. And then the third method is to help you check and make sure that you're correct. Because sometimes if you're using larger numbers, you may have a multiplication or division mistake. And if you double check those, you will always make sure that you're right, okay? All right, so if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. And you guys have a great day. Thank you, Floyd County.